Hello and welcome. I'm Karen McNenny, author, mediator, co-parent specialist, and divorce consultant. And this is The Good Divorce Show, where we don't just talk about how to get divorced, but how to be divorced. Whether you're considering divorce, in the middle of it, or navigating life after, you're in the right place. And it takes courage to be here. This show exists to bring divorce out of the shadows of shame and into the light of education, and to challenge the idea that divorce must be destructive or adversarial. You're going to hear from professionals and real families sharing honest stories of resilience and repair, proof that divorce can be done differently. Divorce is not a weapon, it's a tool. And when used well, it can be a tool for transformation. Thanks for being here. Let's dive in. Raiford Dalton Palmer is an experienced Illinois divorce attorney and the best-selling author of I Just Want This Done: How Smart, Successful People Get Divorced Without Losing Their Kids, Money, and Minds. It was named the best family law book of all time by Book Authority. Raiford has been featured in prominent media outlets, including WGN-TV, the Associated Press, the Los Angeles Times, Forbes, Newsweek, U.S. News, the New York Post, Sirius XM, and now The Good Divorce Show. His next book is in the cooker. I Just Want to Know: How Smart, Successful People Decide on Divorce Without Fear, Uncertainty, and Doubt. And it is coming out later this year. We're going to hear more about it. Raiford is currently the CEO of STG Divorce Law PC, a law firm focusing solely on matrimonial law in the Chicago area. Welcome to The Good Divorce Show, Raiford.
Thanks, Karen. I'm glad to be here. I appreciate it.
We already have something in common. We're both surviving authors.
Yes.
And more importantly, divorce survivors.
That's
and
right.
I do feel like it's something that we walk through and come out the other side, obviously a changed person. And you as a divorce attorney, how did it go? Can you give us a little bit of a high level arc of your own divorce experience? How long ago was that for you?
We got divorced in 2015. I'm remarried, and I was married 24 years to my first wife, and we had a good divorce. So, there's a lot of bad things about it, a lot of negative things, of course, but as divorces go, it was uncontested, done by agreement. We sat at the dining room table and opened up our laptops and worked out our financials. And a lot of credit goes to my first wife for she's a level-headed, practical, very smart person. And we also shared everything about finances. So there was trust between us about all that stuff. So working that out was very straightforward. The hard part is the emotional stuff and the counseling and marriage counseling, all the things we did on that with that process. And once we came to the realization it was done, or that we were done with our marriage, the rest, the mechanics of getting divorced were rather simple.
Mm-hmm.
We were lucky in that respect.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a myth that divorce is just a legal event. And I always say attorneys are going to help you get legally divorced. But we also have to learn how to be divorced if we share children. Did you share children with your first wife?
Yeah, we have 2 sons. They're both adults now.
Yeah, and that means there's graduation and grandbabies and a forever relationship just because the marriage has ended, not the relationship.
That's
So I
right.
really celebrate your sons
Right.
and the benefit that they're getting to live now by having 2 reasonable parents who didn't blow up the family on the way out the door.
Yeah, you have to keep that in perspective for sure. And that was a big thing for both of us. And our boys mean everything to us. So that was our primary thing. So with the oldest son was 18, so parenting schedule wasn't an issue. He was going off to college, but the younger one was starting high school. So we had a parenting agreement that was very loose and not structured, because we just let kind of life decide and his needs determine what we would do for parenting. And it worked out very well.
And if you're in conversation with that co-parent and you're not at war with them, then it kind of just should resemble co-parenting under one roof, co-parenting across 2 homes. We
Yep.
talk on a regular basis, we check in, we ask that one important question: how are they doing? Right? That's the one thing that we have to stay in conversation with. How are those kids doing? And it doesn't end at 18.
That's right.
It's parenting for life.
Yeah, and it's still a partnership with the kids. And it, at its best, it needs to be that. And if you expect your kids to be healthy and be successful, you've got to work together to make that happen. And we did that very well. Also, credit goes to Stephanie's husband, Scott, and my wife, Julie, who I think welcomed the kids on both directions with open arms and were treated both of us very well. Scott's treated my first wife very well. And Julie's been good to me. And the kids see that. That modeling is important. And then also they've been great to the kids.
Yeah.
And that's huge. Can't be understated.
I like to refer to them as the bonus parents.
Yeah, right.
And
Right.
that the family can grow in abundance, and I really, felt I've been divorced 15 years now, and sort of the threat of new people coming in, whereas the kids are like, "Hey, maybe new siblings, new parents, more people to look out for my best interest," and when we do it well, it is a story of abundance, not scarcity.
Yeah, I think exactly. The kids were younger and are hesitant at first, which is understandable. Like, who is this person in my house? And,
For
I
sure.
didn't sign up for this guy to show up. But over time, if you do the right thing and you play your cards right, treat people fairly, your actions speak very loudly, and the kids eventually come around. And they see you treating their mom right. They see you respecting their space and not trying to be their dad, respecting their dad with regard to them. I didn't try to be my stepdaughter's dad.
Yeah.
When
Yes.
I moved in, I talked to them and I said, I'm married to your mom. That doesn't make me your father. So you've got to be careful about those boundaries, especially with a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old girl, which was a new experience for me. That was a new universe.
'Cause you had 2 older sons,
Yeah.
and to have that kind of transparency. It warms my heart to hear this story, Rafe, about
Oh,
your own blended family, and as a divorce attorney, I'm like, I think every divorce attorney should go through divorce, so they can have your kind of perspective and empathy.
it's funny for many years, I was a divorce lawyer, never had been divorced. I started doing it in '01 and got divorced in 15. And I used to think, oh, I can be a good divorce lawyer without that experience. And you certainly can be. And I was empathetic and you care about your clients. You want to be a good lawyer and do a good job for people, but you certainly get a new perspective when it happens to you about the trauma you go through, even in a so-called good divorce. And just because it's simple, I think you said something like this before the show. Just because it might be simple or straightforward doesn't make it easy.
Yeah,
And
divorce is synonymous with an easy divorce. We're
yeah,
talking about outcome, not process. It's hard,
right.
even in the best conditions.
Yeah. So the perspective I gained from going through it myself has been valuable in the subsequent years in both the way I approach things and the way that I train our lawyers to deal with our clients.
Mhm. Is there anything specific you could identify kind of around that? Like what you do differently at STG that maybe you wouldn't find at other attorneys? And I'm a mediator, co-parent specialist, divorce consultant, so I'm interfacing with attorneys,
Right.
and sometimes I say attorneys are doing what they're trained to do, which is to kind of fight relentlessly, even
Right.
if it's against someone who they need to, their client has to stay engaged with. And in a system that typically rewards conflict, it certainly financially rewards long drawn out things, but you've crafted something different that is more humanistic. You look for efficiency, and I'm just wondering how you embed that into the philosophy and the behaviors of the attorneys in your firm.
So that's a great question because that's a lot of what's in my first book. And it's all about taking a long-term view to the client relationship and the business. In the business of the law practice, our firm just does divorce law. And realizing that also I come from a commercial litigation and business transaction background and also personal injury litigation where I worked for an insurance carrier for a few years defending the drivers in auto cases when I started as a lawyer, and then did commercial or business litigation cases in federal court and state court. and had business clients doing deals, transactions. And what those clients demand a cost benefit analysis. And they say, okay, this problem is a $50,000 problem, Rafe. I don't want to spend more than X dollars to figure out where we're going with this. And, if you spend 50 to save 50, you're losing. So that was the approach I brought to divorce practice when I started doing divorce in 2001. That was just normal to me to do a cost benefit analysis. But I found out that that was kind of unusual in the divorce world with lawyers who grew up doing divorce. And the part of it is this: you mentioned the system and the dollars involved and the conflict. And I've thought a lot about that. And that's also in the book. So when I was originally writing the book, the first few chapters felt like a screed I was writing to denounce the system. Like it was like the first draft was like this angry, epistle. If I'm using the biblical term, I was writing this
Yes.
manifesto about the system
Right.
being terrible. And we got to, it sounded like this guy was going to tear it down, right? Well, I don't have the power to do that, right? So my editor, Joshua Lysick, who's literally the best ghostwriter and editor in the world, Joshua was reading it and he says to me in one of our meetings, I think 6 people are going to buy this book. He's like, your mom, your dad, a couple other people. And he said, you're writing this book that's like really directed at lawyers. You're complaining about the system. You're telling lawyers what's wrong with them. You're telling judges what's wrong with the system. Who's going to buy this? And I realized, okay, I have to calm down. The message is right, but I have to recalibrate this to the audience. So it's like, okay, sure, explaining the system's valuable, but we need to tell the audience, what are they going to do about it?
Mm-hmm.
The system's built around conflict because our court system is a binary court system.
That's right.
It's a win-lose system.
Yeah.
Guilty, not guilty.
Winner, loser.
Winner, loser. And
You
that's
take more, they get less. And
yeah.
then we put married folk who had a love story and have a forever relationship in that system. I'm with you. I like, hear.
So we have this system of jurisprudence that's understandably, when you look at the roots of it, and it works for a lot of things fairly well. It has to be an approximation. We can't get perfect results from really any system. But it's taking a win-lose system and applying it to a shades of gray problem.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to reduce it to sort of mathematical certainty, which we can't expect. And we're expecting humans who are fallible to bring evidence to the table to show a judge who is also a human and is fallible. And we have rules of evidence that restrict what the court can consider when considering these cases. And we're giving them all limited time. We only have a couple afternoons to have a trial. And we're expecting these wonderful outcomes. So we've kind of built failure into the system to some extent, which is why there's a proliferation of mediation, ADR, collab, arbitration in the family law universe because people know it's broken.
Yes.
Private judges in California, which I learned about recently and was shocked, but that's because people know the system doesn't work real well. So this is the struggle. But to get back to answering your question, the difference is I took the civil litigator, commercial lawyer mindset and applied it to my divorce practice, which is cost benefit analysis. Let's take emotion out of it while recognizing the emotions are real. So we are empathetic. We're going to listen. But we need to realize what percentage of this problem is emotional and needs a coach or a counselor, and what percentage can we actually fix? I call it the 90-10 rule. 90% of the person's problems are things we can't do anything about.
We meaning the attorneys.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're mechanics and we can loosen or tighten bolts on certain parts on the engine. But what's usually upsetting people is a bunch of things outside of the universe of the courthouse that we can't do anything about.
That's right.
And so understanding those limitations, explaining them to the clients up front, and saying those emotions are understandable, but they're not going to be productive to getting you from A to B is so important to calibrate expectations and then say, all right, you have XYZ goals and those are, like life goals. Those are much bigger picture things than you want your kids to be good and these other things. All we can get you is a custody and parenting agreement, which is a bunch of words that say what the visitation will be like and who's deciding what for the kids. There's no color there. It's just like a computer program and an imperfect one at best. And then money. You get, here's your assets, here's how we're dividing liabilities, and then support. And then there's all the rest of your life you have to address.
And I so appreciate this because you're really highlighting that the legal component of a divorce journey is finite and one thread in the tapestry.
Right.
So you mentioned a number of different approaches that are happening in divorce currently.
Yes.
Collab and mediation and ADR. Can you talk through that menu a little bit? Give some education to the folks listening so they better understand sort of what's shifting and that there's more tools in the toolbox than just a litigating attorney.
Sure. So when I started doing this in 2001, ADR I was starting to see alternative dispute resolution in other things, business litigation,
ADR, alternative
alternative dispute
resolution.
resolution. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. And so corporations were doing mediations and arbitrations to save litigation costs. And that was early days for alternative dispute resolution and divorce. Of course, in the late 90s, Stuart Webb came up with the concept of collaborative in Minnesota.
And that's
Yeah,
collaborative divorce, which is a whole nother approach that is recognized by the American Bar Association, where you each have an attorney. And the concept is that the attorneys are required to collaborate and agree not to go to court.
right.
That's sort of the hallmark. And there's more to it, but that's kind of the gist of what makes collaborative unique and a good option for certain cases.
So I guess I'll start with litigation. So litigation is traditional court resolution with a judge, no jury, except in a few states. And the judge decides the case after the parties and their attorneys put on evidence, and the court comes up with a judgment eventually. And that's typically the most expensive and time consuming method. Out of frustration about that and a feeling that there was probably a better way, people started seeking out mediation as they were in commercial cases. They thought, well, let's try mediation in a civil or in a divorce context. Mediation is the use of a neutral third party mediator, kind of like referee isn't the right term because they're not deciding the case. The mediator is helping guide the parties through the decision making and agreement process and making sure people sort of play by the rules. And depending on the school of mediation you subscribe to, they either suggest possible options or they remain kind of quiet about that and just help guide people through. It depends on your flavor of mediator. But mediation, I think, can be appropriate for fairly straightforward issues or clearer issues where they aren't too complex. I think it's pretty good for parenting.
Mhm.
I think mediation falls down with complex cases because people really need attorneys to give them advice on at least certain aspects of their cases. So at least having an attorney advise them at stages in the mediation can be helpful. I don't subscribe to what's known as attorney assisted mediation, which is where attorneys sit in the room with a mediator. I think that defeats the purpose of mediation. I think if you're going to go that route, get rid of the mediator and get collaborative attorneys and have a collaboration rather than
Yeah.
having a mediator present. So there's been this trend in our area. Some lawyers have sold this and mediators have sold this idea of attorney assisted mediation. I'm not a fan,
Hmm.
but that
Is it
is an option.
too many cooks in the kitchen? Do the attorneys kind of undermine the mediation process? Is that your
In my opinion, too many of these cases are litigators in sheep's clothing.
Hmm.
And I'm not naming any names. There are also certain retired judges who act as mediators, and these sessions go on for 6 or 8 hours, which is insane, in my opinion. And nobody can think after 2 hours. So
Right.
if you're listening to this show and you're considering mediation or collaborative, don't let the sessions go beyond 2 hours or so.
Mhm.
If you're reaching a breakthrough, that's one thing, but you're going to get exhausted and you're not going to think straight. And once you finally see that memorandum of agreement, which is a product that comes from mediation or collab, you won't like it. There'll be terms that you say, I agreed to that. I don't remember. And because you'll be foggy and you're not thinking right.
Right. It's this marathon.
So we have litigation, mediation, one mediator, neutral person trained in mediation, typically divorce lawyer or mental health professional with a background in family law and trained with that. And then you've got rarely or not as common arbitration, which is a process, consider it kind of a mini trial. So rules of evidence apply. There's a discovery process, but everything's abbreviated and accelerated. And there is a person sitting there that's an arbitrator, and they really act like a judge. And that's a way to accelerate the process. If you have more of a complex financial case and you can't reach agreements, you need somebody to really listen to the evidence and make a decision. For example, two financial experts who have a different opinion about the value of a business, you might consider family law arbitration.
Mm-hmm.
And it's faster, typically less expensive than a court process, though not always. That's one option. And then collaborative practice, which we mentioned and you explained very well, which is two attorneys trained in mediation and collaborative practice, plus a team, which can include divorce coaches, a financial neutral, typically. They not always don't have to be, but they can help greatly with the process. And the magic, the secret sauce in the collaborative model is the participation agreement. And this is an agreement everybody signs that says, okay, what we say is confidential. The real magic thing is if either party goes to court, both lawyers are fired and they have to get new counsel. People might say, well, that sounds expensive. Well, that's the point.
That's the point.
That's the whole idea. Yeah. When Stu Webb wrote his initial letter, he wrote a letter to a buddy that was in the divorce business, and he explained like 9 points in this 2-page letter about why he thought this might work. He was a veteran divorce lawyer who'd been fighting for years in court and was getting sick of it.
Yep.
And what he essentially was saying was, in most of these cases, we kind of know what the outcome should be, or within a certain realistic range. Why don't we just cut through all the nonsense and sit down and hash it out? That was really what he was saying. He said, let's play nice in the sandbox. Let's lay things out and be realistic and get it done. That's effectively what he said. And the kicker was this idea of the lawyers are fired if they don't behave.
That's right. If it escalates, then everyone's got to start over.
Yeah. So the lawyers are financially tied to the client's success in the process. And they're not motivated to blow it up and try to go to court and drag it out.
I just want you to hear that there are more than one pathways through divorce, and every family is unique. Every case is unique, but when we're always reaching for the same tool, which is divorce is a weapon, I'm taking you to court and I'm taking you down, there are children who suffer at the hands of that system and that one approach.
Right. Exactly. And one more option I should mention, because I mentioned in the book, I compare all the divorce options, like the methods. One is what I call it's kitchen table divorce or 1.5 attorney divorce.
Yeah.
What do you mean 1.5 attorneys? Well, you reach an agreement, you get one lawyer initially, they can talk to the one of the parties and give them some guidance about generally how these things work, help them with the financial and that kind of thing. And most people have 2 cars, 2 kids, 2 401ks, 2 incomes, and a house, maybe in a condo or something. Well, that doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out how the divorce should work in most states.
Right.
So with the 1.5 attorney divorce, if you're getting along relatively well, you can have one lawyer draft up all the documents. Nobody files in court initially. The lawyer, once that thing is close to being ready enough or as close as they can get it, send it to the other spouse who's they've been talking the whole time. So there's no big surprise. Then that person takes the documents to an attorney they hired to go over everything.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They review it, see if it meets their approval, like this is the deal they think they agreed to, suggest any modifications. And then if it's ready to go, file and get people divorced. That's the most efficient, least expensive option, short of doing it yourself, which has its own stresses and pitfalls.
Yes, and can drag on as well. And this concept of efficiency, again, what we know of the old traditional system is that the financial incentive for attorneys is milk this sucker, let it last, go through mediation, don't agree, get into litigation.
Right.
It's the one profession where you don't have to bid out your work. It's just kind of an endless open paycheck. But that's not your approach, Rayford. You have a very different thought about the benefit of getting families through an efficient, low conflict process. Why is that your business model?
Because it's good business. It's
Because
entirely selfish. I'm not doing it. I mean, I like to say I'm a nice guy.
trying to make you look good.
No, and I appreciate that. And yes, I like to get up in the morning and look at. Everybody likes to get up in the morning and look in the mirror and say I'm a good person. And when I was a guy in law school, I didn't want to come out. I didn't want to graduate and say, "Oh, I want to take advantage of people." That was not my goal. I wanted to do well and be able to pay my bills and also do right by people. And that's always been my guiding thing. And what you find out is it's not a surprise. If you treat people well, they'll treat you well back. So the golden rule works in magical ways. So I realized if I work on this case efficiently, treat people the way I'd like to be treated, get this thing done as best as I can. And sometimes you can't. The other side is the wild card. You can only be as efficient as the other side in a lot of. And so you could be the best lawyer in the world. If the other person's making a mess of things, you've got to address it and it's going to take longer and cost more. But if we can move the ball as efficiently as we can on our side, at least we're doing what we should be doing for our client. And what that results in is our good client reviews,
Mhm.
and happy clients send other people to you. So I'd rather make a few less $1,000 with client A and have them send me client B, C, and D. That's it. It's a long-term mindset. It's
Yes.
an investment in growth. And if you build it, they will come. If you do it well, the word of mouth is your most powerful marketing tool.
Yes.
And it's also free.
And I understand the marketing and the business strategy, and of course it makes sense. And it's good for society. It's
Yeah.
good for kids. It's good for the economics of our communities to help families divorce with less conflict and less expense.
Yeah. And your employees like it too, because nobody wants to work for a jerk, or they don't want to feel like they're part of the evil empire. The team wants to feel like they're doing good too.
Yeah.
And they're working for nice people and doing things the right way. That's one of our guiding values is do the right thing. Do the right thing for the client, even if it costs us more. That's because ultimately in the long run, it's the best play for everybody.
We are speaking today with the wise and controversial, I might add, in the approach of really disrupting the divorce industry. Raiford Dalton Palmer is the author of I Just Want to Get This Done, his upcoming book, I Just Want to Know How. We're going to come back and talk more about that upcoming book. Stay with us so that the education continues. If this conversation is resonating, there are tools to help you put it into practice. Grab my book, The Good Divorce: How to End Your Marriage Without Ending Your Family. It offers clear guidance for navigating divorce with intention and care, especially when kids are involved. And for ongoing support and education, you can join me at the Good Divorce Academy, which is my online community and classroom. And if you'd like to work with me directly, you're going to find more information at thegooddivorcecoach.com. Welcome back. Thanks for staying with me. I'm Karen McNenny, your Good Divorce Coach, chatting today really with a pioneer in the transformation of divorce. And it's such a delight to have Raiford Dalton Palmer, author of I Just Want to Get This Done, and upcoming book, I Just Want to Know. We're going to dive into both of those. One of the things that I have found you mentioned in our first segment, Rafe, that if people are getting together relatively well, you can sit down and have the kitchen table conversation. And I always say, if you can't have a conversation, if you're not getting along fairly well, chances are you maybe stayed too long. And that's one mistake that I see people make. And that
Could
is
be.
somewhat of a a social commentary,
Right.
right? You don't really give people a lot of permission to move out of their marriage unless it's on fire. So then we stay and we start a lot of fires. But where else do you see where couples, once they're in the process as they're approaching divorce, where they might get it wrong, or what's within their control to help their divorce to be more peaceful and less high conflict?
Staying focused on the big picture is key. Keeping your focus on what's good for children, and a couple of classic ones is going dark on social media. Don't blow up your spouse on social or with family and friends. It never pays. It feels good in the short term. It never pays in the long run. And if people disagree with me on, I've posted this many times on social media, and I get pushback. And well, what if he deserves it? He's a bad guy and a narcissist, and he abused me and whatever. And you know what? He knows that, and you know that. The rest of the world doesn't care. They don't need to know. And
And certainly your kids. What are they going to do with that information? Again, how are they doing? What
right,
are they doing with that story? And eventually all the truth comes out and everybody can fall to their, their own story making and their own conclusions. But
yeah,
I couldn't agree more. And when I'm coaching, one of the first things we do is we all unfriend ourselves. We all make agreements about social media and that we're not here to broadcast um, what will end up being damaging.
yeah. And
Where else?
Hollywood, like celebrities, teach us the way to go. 99% of celebs, they put out a joint message that says, we're going to do this thoughtfully and with our children at heart, blah, blah, blah. And please pray for us on our journey, something to that effect. And that's it. And
Yep.
the general approach, because they have a brand to protect.
Yes.
And really we do too.
We have
We're not different. We have a personal brand to protect, and our
Mhm.
reputation, our community, our children who don't need to hear that so and so cheated on so and so. And that's adult stuff. And kids don't understand it and shouldn't have to be drowning in that crap.
Couldn't
So
agree more.
the celebs show us the way, and at least on that. And so we talk about that on our podcast quite often, which is here's the usual joint statement.
Yes.
And they're not bad mouthing each other. They have a picture of the spouse with the kids or something, and that it's something nice, and they leave it at that. And
Yep.
then,
We do the same thing in the good divorce method. Like,
yeah,
you're in charge of your story. Write your headline. People will follow your lead. Do it with dignity and grace. And
because
everyone will rise around you and follow your lead. Yeah,
well,
it's
then you're a class act, and people look up to you, and they appreciate
yes.
that. And
Mhm.
then you don't need people. You don't want to feed the gossip machine because that's only going to get worse.
Yep.
Now, when you start giving crumbs out, people want more, and they start bugging you for information. Then they're asking the other side, well, why didn't you respond to that? How are you going to let her say that? And now it becomes a mess. So it's like feeding that monster. It's never profitable.
Yeah. Yeah. Such wise advice. You also talk about again, I always think how we begin is how we end. So our mindset, those early communication steps, and this idea of cost analysis benefit, which was at the forefront of the work you did in corporate litigation, but you say it really applies also within our divorce journey. Help us understand that better.
So the concept of cost benefit analysis is at all times looking at what your goals are in the divorce case, being realistic about those, number one. So what am I trying to accomplish? Are those goals realistic? What is the range of potential outcomes with those goals? Because it's usually a range, it's not usually a magic number.
Mhm.
What will it take to get there in terms of cost? And there's more than one cost, which I'll talk about in a minute. And can I settle today within that range? Am I already able to do that, factoring in the cost it will take to get there? So if I'll make it really simple, if I'm hoping to get $100,000, let's just put a price on it. Let's put the parenting aside. I don't want to spend 100,000 to get 100,000 because then I've got zero. If I'm going to get 100,000, I'm leery about spending 50,000 to get there. If my spouse is going to say, I'll give you know, I'll do $85,000 today and I know it's going to cost me 100, well, let's be simple. If I get 85 today and it's going to cost me 50 more to get to 100, I'll take it all day long
Yeah. And
because
helping people to
I'm
see that math, and it's the rational versus the irrational, that emotional hijacking that makes you wanna fight for what?
well, and people say I should get 100. Why am I agreeing to 85? Because you're coming out ahead when you factor in the cost. I
Yes.
always say you can pay for your kids' college or my kids' college. It's your choice. You can choose,
Yeah,
so
that's excellent.
so it's like it's within your control. If you're dealing with a spouse that's completely unreasonable, the analysis won't mean anything. You're going to war and you just buckle up.
Yeah,
And those happen. But that's less common. The
I agree. I think there's a lot of just regular people who need to get unmarried and still enjoy the journey of raising their children together, like you and your family have demonstrated, my family.
Keeping that perspective is so important, and realizing nobody gives you credit for emotions. The judge doesn't care about your feelings in the courthouse. Who did what to whom is completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
Who started it? Who did what to whom? The court doesn't allow any evidence in of who the good person is or the bad person.
Which might
So
make you crazy. And that's why you get a therapist or a divorce coach and someone who can process that, not your attorney at $400 an hour.
right.
Not only is it not worth it, they're not skilled, honestly, right? That's not your training. Um,
And the costs are more than just attorney's fees. This is
yes.
where people fall down and they don't think about this. There's their opportunity cost. Well, I could be divorced now and moving on with my life and my kids. You lose focus at work because you're thinking about your divorce. So you're going to lose performance at work. So that's a cost. You're burning more cash because everybody does during a divorce. I'm not talking about attorney's fees. I just mean you're eating out more. People are now buying a second set of clothes. They're buying furniture. They're doing all kinds of goofy things that they might not otherwise do because the family's kind of in the process of splitting. So there's all this additional expense going on.
Yep.
And and that's going on month after month in a divorce case. All this on top of the attorney's fees. You lose focus at work. You have emotional damage to yourself. I don't care what you say. My blood pressure, even in my good divorce, my blood pressure was ridiculously high. And it hurts people. There's physical and emotional damage being done to people, not to mention their children's emotional uh, damage. And that's your surrounding family because they're getting collateral damage is affecting your broader family because they're hearing about all this stuff.
Yeah.
So
The
there's
sugar.
all these costs that are
Yes,
adding up.
that's right. So you got to really decide, is that worth it for the other 20,000 that you're going to burn up anyway?
Yeah.
Oh,
And being realistic about your outcomes and getting a lawyer is going to give you perspective and say, here's the realistic range of outcomes. Here's what it'll take to get there. And then making a logical decision about do I settle or do I go far forward from this point? That gives you a much better assessment of what you should be considering in a settlement. And so your settlement range is broader than your trial range the earlier you are because you haven't spent all that cost yet. As you get closer to trial, people are less likely to settle because they've sunk all those costs.
right. And the
And
loss.
they've emotionally sunk a lot of costs.
Good wisdom, and I think it really echoes the title of your first book. Show it to us again so people get the visual. I just
That's
want
done
it done. How many times we hear that as divorce
all
professionals, and
the
I
time.
was
Right.
telling Ruth in the break, I've actually have mine lent out right now. It is
It's
yep.
got to send you more. Thank you.
You have made the commitment, for book 2. I just want to know.
Right.
Tell us what a reader is gonna find in that and what really led you to know that there was more to write about and more to share from your perspective.
Yeah. So when my editor and coach, Joshua Lysick, said, when you're writing a second book, you really have a couple of approaches. One is prequel or sequel, kind of obviously. Then the other is picking a chapter in the book and expanding it. So maybe there's some topic in your first book that really deserves an entire book. I thought about the expand a chapter option, decided against it. And what I always think about problems to solve. And usually the best things to write about are things that are problems you have. So this book was written because I wanted to give something to clients to say, this is how I think about this stuff. Read this or read chapter 5. Like before we talk about settlement, read the chapter about settlements. Let's talk about the mindset behind cost benefit analysis and how I think about it. So I don't have to spend an hour telling you this stuff. You can read it and you'll understand it and have a good background. And then we can have a good conversation about your case. So I found myself repeating these concepts all the time with clients. And I thought, I looked for a book first. I said, I wonder if there's a book I can give people, because I give people David Bach has a book called Smart Women Finish Rich. It's been out forever. I give it to guys too. It's a great financial basics book about everything from taxes to retirement and everything else. It's for people that are not as financially savvy. It's an awesome book to give out. Well, I couldn't find a divorce book that said the things that I was telling everybody. So I decided, okay, I'm going to write it. And that's how that started. With I Just Want to Know, the subtitle is How Smart, Successful People Decide on Divorce Without Fear, Uncertainty, and Doubt. It's the book I wished I had when I was struggling with my own marriage. Because what happens is so many people call and they're not ready for this book.
Yep.
They're saying, hey, here's my situation. I'm not happy. Here's the problem. I just want to kick the tires and find out what's a divorce kind of about, but I haven't decided yet. And then at the end of the conversation, they say, what should I do? Like, well, I'm not the guy who's supposed to tell you, that's a job for your priest or your counselor or whatever. And you need to decide that, I can't tell you to leave your wife or husband, and that's not my job. I'm not going to, after 45 minutes, I'm not going to pass judgment on your marriage. But, what I can do is provide a tool that I wish I had, which is a step-by-step guide with no steps skipped about check A, B, C, D, E before you jump out of the aircraft.
Yep.
Have you checked the controls? Do you have gas in the engines? Are to use an analogy, like, have you checked everything before you bail out?
Yes. And many of us, I say we pack our psychological parachute, and usually it's one person in the couple who is
Yes.
packing that parachute long before the other. And they're like, I didn't even know we were in a plane. And
Yes.
now we're getting ready to jump. This is such an important book. When will it be released? Do you have a date?
It's Q3, so in the next few months it's coming out. So I'm in the editing process now.
And we're chatting in 2026 because we're evergreen here in The Good Divorce.
Yes.
This conversation will exist forever. So in the fall of 2026, look for this book. And I think it really highlights something I also, align so much with, is that we think if we're talking about divorce, it means we're going to have a divorce.
Right.
And that when we're not talking about it, it's just sitting there as a threat on the shelf. And it is a threat that, if I say the D word, and when it comes off the shelf, it becomes a weapon.
Right.
And what Rafe is offering to you is to satisfy the divorce curious in all of us. I think your book, my book, should be handed to people when they get married. Not because we hope that
Right.
your plane goes down, but because a responsible flight crew is going to tell you, if there's turbulence, this is what to expect.
Right.
We're going down. Here's the things you should know. And that if we took a little bit of the mystery out of it and release some of that threatening pressure of a marriage that is struggling and understood it, then we might make a more elegant exit, a more informed exit, so that when we are then maybe arriving, like you and your spouse a lot of us, we're in couples therapy, fighting for our marriage when we come to the decision. And then we turn to our therapist and say, well, now what? And they're like, call a lawyer. We're like, well, no, go pick up Rafe's book. Go pick up my book.
And my
Get
thought is,
educated.
and my hope is people read my book before they say the D word. And because one of the things I say in the beginning of the book is, don't say the D word to your spouse until you've really gone down through a lot of this, because it's so toxic. And you just said it. When you say that word, people freak out. Maybe they shouldn't, because The other thing is if somebody's asking you to go to marriage counseling, that doesn't mean they want a divorce. That means they want a better marriage. And so they're asking you to help fix the thing, not to, if they didn't care, if they were done, they wouldn't waste their time with counseling.
That's right. And
So
we should fight for our marriages, right? If that's on the table, then yes, right? But we can also see where the exit keeps presenting itself, that off-ramp is there. You don't have to keep avoiding it. And maybe even the more radical idea is you and your spouse pick up Rafe's book at
yeah,
this and say, let's explore this and learn about it together so we can have a conversation that isn't loaded with threat, but informed by education and expertise.
yeah. And the whole thing is trying to assemble the resources that I eventually pulled together because even though I was a divorce lawyer, I never read about the love languages or John Gottman or any of the stuff that's considered like
Conscious
state,
uncoupling, the work of Catherine Woodward Thomas, all again, the legal piece is this little thread in a
right?
really complex tapestry of human relationship.
Exactly. So it's an effort to provide those resources in a checklist in a way of things to do and ways to be introspective about your relationship before you approach your spouse. First, is it me? Step really, the first part of the book is it me? Because it could be, we don't like hearing that, but it could be. And then are we fixing that stuff? Because you can't control the other person. You can only control yourself. So the first part is, hey, maybe I could do some stuff to improve my situation. That's number one. Number two is it them? Okay, so let's look at them. Are they meeting your needs? What's wrong with that? You know, what are your concerns on that? And helping crystallize those things and not just have bad feelings, but let's get some concrete ideas about what maybe I should do and improve. And B, what are the things you really want your spouse to do or change? The next part of that is an analyzing honestly, do you think they can change?
Yeah.
Is it fair to expect that? And then at that point, also huge pitch for counseling and early counseling because
Early intervention and prevention is
people typically wait way too long. And the usual rap on marriage counseling is people say, "Oh, it's terrible, it doesn't work." I would say that's because people typically do it way too late.
you wait until you're stage 4 cancer. Like,
Right.
no, we know when things are not going well, and that's when we should start treatment.
Marriage counseling, and the fear is if I ask for counseling, the other person's going to just think I want a divorce and I'm going to kick off this landslide. And that's not the case. So we
No.
have to sort of destigmatize marriage counseling and encourage people to go early and often, as the joke goes, and realize it's kind of an essential part of helping you communicate with your spouse and make things work better. Um, I think people wait until one person is jumping out of the plane and then
Yep.
they kind of performatively go to marriage counseling and they say, "Oh, yeah, let's go to counseling now." Well, it's too late. The person's already mentally checked out.
Yeah. Raiford Dalton Palmer, just such a refreshing conversation, not only
Thanks.
with a divorce attorney who is giving families a different opportunity, but your own story. And I really appreciate you bringing your vulnerability and your insight as a divorced dad, as a second husband, and as a co-parent that is still serving not only your own sons but your bonus daughters and
That's
much
right.
for those children. That's who I work for, that's who you work for, and that's who we want you to be thinking about in every conversation around your divorce journey and your marriage journey. How are they doing? And what's our responsibility to that? Where can people find you, Rafe? What are the resources you have available? You are a treasure, so give it to us.
Thank you. Well, aside from the book, which is on Amazon, Kindle, Audible, and where all ebooks are sold, that's I Just Want This Done. It's easy to find. We've got our podcast, the I Just Want This Done Divorce podcast, which is on all the popular pod platforms and YouTube. My partner, Rahul Iyer, and I host that every week. It's live streamed typically Thursdays, and the recorded version drops every Friday. We talk about, we do a little entertainment and education in the show. It's not just boring. It's our motto is not just another boring divorce lawyer podcast. So we
Great.
yeah,
Two
we talk
in.
about celebrity divorce, we talk about dating apps, dating trends, relationship advice, and then we do talk about a nugget of real legal stuff in each show. And we try to make it interesting by using real life scenarios that are usually pulled from our Illinois Divorce Support Network, our private Facebook group, which is geared towards Illinois folks, but not restricted to them. It is free to join, anonymous to post. We have almost 2,000 members, and we answer their divorce questions, sometimes on the air, and we type answers in the Facebook group, and the members also try to help each other out. So that's been a great resource. Then social media, I'm easy to find at Raiford Palmer, like it shows on the screen. So at Raiford Palmer on TikTok, Instagram, and I'm also on X. So the artist formerly known as Twitter. And the firm STG Divorce Law can be easily found STG Divorce Law, which is easy to Google. We're in Chicago and we serve the entire Chicagoland area. We are how smart, successful people get divorced in Chicagoland.
We will have all of that information in the show notes so that you can continue to learn and to educate, so that you don't have to walk through the dumpster fire. There are other options.
Yep.
Ray, final words to our listeners today?
If you keep thank you. If you keep the long view in mind, you keep a big picture mindset, you will do better. That's the gist of the whole book is cost benefit, which means long-term minded. Keep your eye on the goal. And it's easy to get distracted by emotion. Stay focused, take care of yourself and your kids, and you're going to be fine.
Such wise words. And I celebrate you taking the time to be here in this conversation today. It's courageous to show up, whether you're divorce curious or you're in the thick of it, or it's down the road. It's never too late to have a good divorce. And I remind you, everything will be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's not the end.